Welcome to Integrity Radio, a platform where we talk everything maritime. I am your host, Folashade Adiromu. On today's edition of the program, we will be beaming our searchlight on coastal erosion and climate resilience, understanding the ongoing threats, mitigating environmental impact, and building sustainable coastal communities. And to take us through that dialogue, Prince David Omaghomi, Executive Director, Eco Restoration Foundation, is my guest. All right, so let's begin our conversation by doing some definitions and clarifications. Looking at these themes, coastal erosion, climate resilience. Can you just take us through these two concepts?
Okay, so coastal erosion is the gradual washing away of coastal areas. So as we all know what erosion is, when something is forced to give way, it erodes. So we have coastlines, and coastlines are the boundary between the sea and land. Globally, it's been increasing due to several factors. Sea level rise, which is exacerbated by climate change in the first instance. Shipwrecks, abandonment of shipwrecks, indiscriminate dredging activities without control, lack of shoreline protection, deforestation of coastal vegetation, which is very important, like trees and mangroves. And it has lots of impacts, particularly to coastal dwellers, coastal communities, as well as the economy generally.
All right, so let's now talk about the climate resilience. How do we marry the two together?
Okay, so climate resilience is the ability of communities, nations, environment generally to prepare for climate change incidences. So when you have climate change causing catastrophic effects, the ability for communities to be prepared.
How do we, relate it to our environment today?
First of all, for coastal erosion, within the context of the Nigerian environment, within the context of the Nigerian maritime domain,
yes,
it's actually a very difficult time for the country. And we had better declare a coastal erosion emergency as soon as possible. I've always said that Nigeria is facing a coastal erosion challenge, unlike many other coastal countries in Africa. We are at the trigger of Africa, so you see the shape of Africa. That location where our almost 1,000-kilometer of coastline is located is where we have the most pressure from the Bight of Benin, the Atlantic waves, the ocean, because of that curve where we are. And we have been losing our coastlines at a very alarming rate in the last 50 years.
So it doesn't mean that God is angry with us like some have said?
I'm going to come to that. I just want to first land properly on the issue we find ourselves in, why I said we should declare a coastal erosion emergency in the country as soon as possible. So take Ahmadu Bello in Victoria Island as a case study. The original coastline of Lagos was about 9 kilometers from Ahmadu Bello into the sea.
Yes.
As recently as the 1950s, when the Apapa port was being built. So imagine losing 9 kilometers of coastline within 50 years. So that means in the next 50 years, the entire Victoria Island, Ikoyi, Lekki are likely to be below the sea as well due to coastal erosion. We are taking this interview in Lekki. When our kids may be doing this same interview, they may be somewhere around Ogun State.
Not Lekki anymore.
Not Lekki anymore. Because the Lagos Island is below sea level. Right? The Lekki Peninsula is below sea level. And so with rising sea levels, promoting coastal erosion every day, with all the things I've mentioned that trigger coastal erosion, particularly in our Nigerian coast, without taking a coastal erosion emergency, without taking specific steps, right, we risk losing 9 coastal states in the next 100 years. So Lagos, Ondo, Edo, Delta, Bayelsa, Cross River, Akwa Ibom will be all gone. Just imagine that. And if that be the case, we may start having lots of issues with the settler, dweller, residents issues.
Even businesses and,
a lot will be gone. Coastal harbor works, oil and gas facilities, infrastructure, the free trade zone, the refineries, all the things that make up what we are so proud of to be, by the coast,
Exactly.
will all be gone. Now, so it's therefore important that we take coastal erosion from an emergency perspective, and then that leads me into the relationship you were asking, which is climate resiliency. So it's important that the country starts taking strong steps, to prepare the future, to be resilient, to the climate emergency that is happening, globally. This is not a Nigerian issue. However, the Nigerian issue here, as it relates to our maritime space, is because of our laxity. I would want to put it this way. Our problem in Nigeria is the prevalence of laws, prevalence of agencies without any implementation.
So many policies without...
Agencies fighting one another. We have 9 coastal states. We have 9 development agencies in all the states. They are not syncing together. The environment is a continuum. The coastal environment is a continuum. There is no wall separating the Lagos State coastal area from Ondo State coastal areas, right? So be that as it may, the contiguous nature of our coastal areas, our over 6,000 kilometers of inland waterways, there is no cooperation amongst the governments. You have Deso Padek, Ondo Padek, Edo Padek, everybody's padeking themselves. You have the NDDC, you have the Ministry of Niger Delta. I've seen one community in the River Ramos, where I worked for a period, which is the natural boundary between Delta and Bayelsa State. And then I've seen 3 signboards for the same project, all 10 meters apart. So NDDC, shoreline protection, Age River, 5 billion naira. And then 5 minutes walk, you see another signboard, Desopadec, shoreline protection, 5 billion naira project. And then you go further again, Ministry of Niger Delta Affairs, shoreline protection, 2 billion naira. So each contractor abandons the job. It's sad, actually. The amount of monumental waste that we are just seeing frittered away. Now, what we have always advocated, at the Eco Restoration Foundation is the need for Nigeria to immediately declare a coastal emergency and then put all the intervention agencies together for the formulation of the National Coastal Commission, with each state having directorates, right?
So now that you are
collapsing the Niger Delta Ministry, NDDC, all the state oil producing area development commissions into one body. And, one of the closest that we have seen is under the current administration, where we now have a Ministry of Maritime and Blue Economy, where the ports fall under, where the waterways fall under. So we are beginning to see some listening ears from government to our clamor over the last 10 years for the aggrandization of every coastal effort.
If, today you are given an appointment to come see how we can get, the needed solution as regards our coastal environment, what are some of the things you'll be bringing to the table?
One of the first things that, if given the opportunity, having created the Ministry of Maritime and Blue Economy, it will be to see us accelerating our climate resiliency capacity as a country.
In what way?
And that would, require the protection, like we've always advocated again over the last decade, the building of the Great Wall of Nigeria, which should be a wall from Badagry to Bakasi. That is the only way we can protect the future economic, social safety net or resiliency for Nigeria from the coastal part. Okay, on the northern flank of the country, Nigeria is being attacked by the desert, through desertification, which is a similar form of coastal erosion, but on the side of the desert. The Sahara Desert is coming downwards, southwards to Africa. So you look at the map of Africa, the northern part is a bit brownish, especially when you are flying through, and then the southern part is greenish because we are closer to the ocean. Now, the Sahara Desert is encroaching on a daily basis. But what has happened is 21 countries have come under the Great Green Wall Convention and have all put resources together and are currently...
Nigeria part of that?
Yes, we're part of it. We're actually one of the best making progress. We're one of the most progressive countries under the Great Green Wall Project. And we are currently building all the countries involved in the convention are currently building a 3-kilometer wall of trees to halt the encroachment of the Sahara Desert. But we are doing nothing on the south. So what, with the new government having a Ministry of Maritime and Blue Economy needs to do, if given the opportunity to advise or serve, will be to start replicating the Great Green Wall project in the north, in the south here, by the Great Wall of Nigeria. However, we've also always advocated that despite revenues from oil resources, which are coming largely from the coastal areas, right, being channeled and being used to fund the Ecological Fund Office in the presidency, that is where resources are being used to build the Great Green Wall. It is important that the Great Wall of Nigeria in the southern part also starts getting resources from the Ecological Fund Office, because the funding that will come from the Ministry of Maritime and Blue Economy will be inadequate.
Why are you saying that?
Now, that ministry is going to be getting a budget as every other ministry. However, the Ecological Fund Office is getting a percentage of total national income from the ports, from FIRS, from crude oil sales, from mineral extractive industry, mineral sales. So that money is higher, more consistent, right, than a budget where they will literally wipe off 60% of the budget paying salaries. They will wipe off another 20% of the budget servicing debts. So expecting the magic to happen from the budgetary allocation to the ministry is not going to cut it. Hence, a dedicated approach will be more result-oriented. And then furthermore, a lot of people have always listened to me speak and wonder, you must be crazy advocating for a wall to be built from Badagry to Bakasi. And that is only when we think
looking like a giant project.
A white elephant project. Okay,
so
so now the interesting thing is, whenever given the opportunity to speak further, I always say we as environmental advocates are not even requesting for a concrete wall. Ideally, it should be like a concrete wall because it will last longer.
Forever.
But nothing lasts forever, by the way. But at least it will
take a while.
It will take a while. An example is the Great Wall of Lagos. I call this the Great Wall of Nigeria because it's to span from Badagry to Bakasi. But there is already a Great Wall of Lagos here in Lagos. It's the about 9 kilometers of strong concrete made wall around Eco Atlantic City. So Eco Atlantic City is a real estate project that has now posed a climate resilient solution for Victoria Island. Because over 2 decades, the ocean used to come onto the land. People said the gods were crazy. People say it was the ITB building. People say it was the goddess of this ocean looking at the mirror. There was this building on Ahmadu Bello that had glass all over it when I was going to secondary school then. So people said the goddess used to come see herself because, women like to look at the mirror. So they said the goddess used to come look at herself, every time. And when she came, she splashed water over there. However, the Eco Atlantic City mapped out the original coastline of Lagos and built with several billions a long 9-kilometer wall at the original coastline of Lagos in the 50s, which I referred to earlier on. Now, that wall is now where you now have the entire Eco Atlantic City sitting on. So, for that kind of expense to be done from Badagry to Bakasi would just be unachievable. So we advocate for the Great Wall of Nigeria to be built with mangroves because they are the natural buffers. That way it will be cheaper, it will be more economically empowering because the local communities will be the ones, regenerating and replanting. And then it will be more resilient for us because they will both keep away the sea and they will also sequester 15 times more carbon. But man, not God, has now destroyed them for urbanization, for food, for medicines, for smoking fish, for shelter, and a host of other selfish purposes. And I will call this out of lack of education, lack of information, and then lack of enforcement of the rules.
So if I'm going to come in here now, for me, I'm still seeing a bit of challenge here, especially with some of these coastal communities. How much of this knowledge do they have?
The level of awareness in the coastal communities is very poor. So we have a program called the Ocean Literacy Program, which focuses on educating coastal communities on the need to protect, restore, and conserve, coastal wetlands. And we have seen that unless there are community-based benefits, it actually doesn't last but a whiff. It goes off like a whiff of smoke, You empower them with that information today, but they have to feed. They have to live off the ecosystem services, which is fishing, farming, harvesting the mangroves for all what I've said, trapping sea turtles and eating them. So they, in fact, even calling on ship owners to abandon shipwrecks on their shoreline for a fee, whereas those ones have taken money from insurance. Exactly. And that's why in one of my earlier interviews that caused a lot of uproar at the time, I had said Nigeria is the shipwreck graveyard of the world, because in our 950 thereabouts square kilometers of coastline, we have almost 9,000 shipwrecks abandoned, and those exacerbate the coastal erosion problem. Because if a shipwreck lands at this coast, right where this mic is, in the next 15 years, it will be right where you are. And all this land will have been washed into the sea because of the tidal activity by the waves pushing it. So the wave pushes it further and then breaks off all the sand underneath. So it's just a mind-boggling cycle of destruction that we have along our coastline. So it's important that government takes part, particularly the new Ministry of Maritime Affairs and Blue Economy, Marine and Blue Economy, takes the ocean literacy very seriously, because the communities are the first source of intelligence information for the enforcement of laws. I alluded earlier on to the infighting between or lack of cohesion within government agencies. A sad one is the security forces. The Navy is fighting the Massa, and then the Massa will fight the Marine Merchant Navies. And, everybody's just, the oil wars, the current wars going on between the NNPC, Tantita, Nigerian Navy, NSCDC, and they are framing themselves up and going to the press to mess themselves up. It's just but a national disgrace. These are the kind of things that trickle down and make coastal communities pawns in the hands of government agencies that are meant to protect and educate them. So coastal communities need more education, number one. Number two, coastal communities need empowerment. You need to provide alternatives. If you say don't harvest the mangroves,
some of them still feel it's their community. Why can't make decision for them on what to do with their communities?
It's because they are not carried along. In most of our ocean literacy programs, the communities get wowed. A case study is the Eco Park Mangrove Sanctuary and Research Center, which we cited at Akodo Ise in Ibejuleki. The community have been harvesting mangroves from that park, and then we had a lot of education done. We provided alternatives through clean stoves, and we got the daughter of the ancient traditional medicine man to join our research team what we're doing in providing alternative uses of mangroves for medicinal purposes. People travel from far and wide to consult her. And right now, the community entered a partnership with our foundation, and we have cited Nigeria's second Mangrove Sanctuary and Research Center on a 70-hectare property in Ibejuleki. This would have not been possible if the communities did not buy in to the agenda, buy in to the benefits of the ecosystem for their good. Government is more powerful. Government can do more. Worldwide, only community-based environmental or ecotourism projects succeed worldwide. Even the Amazonian forest, with all the military, all the drug cartels, have only started recording significant progress with the involvement of local communities.
Looking at all we've been discussing so far, it's obvious that we've made a lot of mistakes, so many wrongs. So how do we begin to correct them?
The first step is what the current government, led by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, has done by creating a dedicated ministry to focus on the coastal areas. because in the past it's been tossed from Ministry of Niger Delta, Ministry of Transport, confusion everywhere. So dedicating a ministry in the light of the reality of the need for climate resiliency is the first step we have made. We have gotten it right.
Okay.
Next will be to connect a funding system, meaning ensuring that ministry, ensuring that climate resiliency projects relating to our coastal areas are connected to the national financial mainstream,
Okay.
either through the Ecological Fund Office in the presidency or directly by an act of parliament to ensure a percentage of every revenue from shipping, MPA, every revenue from the oil and gas industry, every revenue from taxation on imports goes to protecting the blue economy. Policy creation
Okay.
and harmonization by the ministry being created. 2, finance. It's one thing to create a ministry, have a minister there. If the financing is not gotten right, it will just be a blue shadow ministry. So financing. And then 3, community involvement. We need to get the communities to buy in. They are the first responders. They are the first set of informants. They are the people who interact. The minister is in Abuja, overseeing my village in Escravos, not knowing what exactly is going on there. You have 9 coastal states, but for Lagos, where the governor's office in Marina is just overseeing the marina itself, every other of the 8 coastal states is nothing short of a 3 hours boat ride, a 5 hours boat ride from the government house to the coastal area. So a governor is on seat for 8 years and he never understands what's going on in the coastal areas, except when he wants to send his deputy there for campaigns every 4 years. So this is where communities, get involved. And not just getting involved by being handed pittance, getting involved by being made policy makers, putting them in charge of certain responsibilities, right? And not using them for magic votes. Because that is what coastal communities are used for currently. So you have a whole city producing 1 million votes, and from the riverine area, 6 million votes. Those who have positions need to appoint people from coastal areas to manage coastal resources.
So how do we bring about using technology to, building sustainable coastal communities?
The more we put technology in the picture, the better for us, because technology will both cut costs. Technology will help with climate resiliency, because one of the climate resilient options is early warning signs. So with technology, you're able to forecast, have weather stations, have drones, have satellite imagery. So with satellite imagery, you can already forecast that if the shoreline has traveled, of the erosion has traveled this much, in the next 15 years, it will be where your iPad is. And then the next 50 years, it will be behind you. So technology plays a role also with education. Schools in the hinterlands, in the coastal areas, will be able to have internet, Wi-Fi, and learn ocean literacy. We can't do it alone. The media can't do it alone. But then the blue economy concept has been to look at the fact that majority of the people on the earth are sea blind, right? And by being sea blind, it makes us not really know what is out there. It makes us not know the importance of the sea. It makes us not understand that without the oceans, there will be no humanity, because the oceans provide over 70% of the oxygen on Earth. The reason why there is no life in Mars is because there's no ocean in Mars. Here we have 5 oceans. We have over 70% of the Earth as oceans. Most of the oil reserves that are of the best, volume-wise, are now being found in the deep offshore. That's where all the fossil fuels have, provided more gas reserves. And there are so many minerals that are yet to be discovered, because if we already have found gold, diamonds, and all that on land, and we have 70% of the world's surface under the water, then you can imagine what else has yet to be found. So the concept of the blue economy is to really help with resiliency. And like I mentioned earlier on, of the 30% space that we have on Earth, a fraction can see the sea. Majority of us on Earth are sea blind. So in the context of your concerns with what we have with climate resiliency, what we need to do about the blue economy, it's to now start promoting the blue economy at every instance, reducing our impact on the oceans, our wastes, because majority of the wastes in the oceans come from land. They are land-based sources.
Definitely.
From plastics, from single-use plastics, going into the drain, from the drain into the canal, into the river, and then boom, into the ocean. In fact, we have the Great Garbage Patch, about 7 of them. The Great Garbage Patch is almost the size of Nigeria in the ocean, filled with plastics. I took a tour of the Recycling Corporation of California. I was amazed at the amount of wealth that's generated from recovering. And, you know, in my meeting with, I can't remember his name again, the CEO of the corporation, just like our Loma here, he had mentioned that they get close to $3 billion a year from Coca-Cola for recoveries. So for every bottle of Coke
that you return,
a cent or 2 cents is added, and that's what incentivizes recollection. So here in Africa, here in Nigeria, most of the NGOs you see or most of the people playing in the recycling space are either the corporations who are buying back or people who are below poverty level, and they are doing it as a just to get something back. Man is destroying the blue economy. So it's important we start educating people. Little actionable steps can help reduce climate change. Architectural green buildings, reduce air conditioning, carpooling, move with others rather than everybody driving a car. You have 5 cars in your house, you know. I feel that government needs to come in drastically to force people to do certain things, so that we stop literally begging people. Like, if I get your lights on, you should be fined. If you leave your lights on, you should be fined. We're coming into the studio now. Your colleague was using the smart lock, and I was happy seeing that. I looked at the other door; it was an analog door. No door should be analog. Smart doors should help switch off the lights when there is nobody. Things as simple as that. Bigger windows to allow more light so you don't put simple practical steps. Returning back to the days of odd and even numbers. Cars. There was a time in Nigeria, odd numbers
go for a particular day. Then the even numbers come on another particular day.
In China, they enforce population control. For example, you shouldn't have more than 2 children.
2 kids, yes.
So I'm not saying we should do that here in Africa. In fact, I want us to have more kids. But what I mean is, government needs to break the barrier of civility and independence and enforce sustainability.
Are we seeing a case of many people benefiting from what we have in existence?
How do you mean?
I mean, you know, we've talked about so much. Maybe we have a lot of people who benefit from all of these things that we're trying to curtail, to protecting, communities, and trying to see how to build a better marine and, the idea of the blue economy.
Actually, I don't see it from that perspective. I see it from a perspective of not having felt the impact of climate change strongly enough.
What we see around us these days.
No, it just started recently. We have all just started waking up to it. Over the last 20 years, we have been saying the same thing. But lately, we have started complaining about the heat. We have started complaining about flooding. We have started complaining about Harmattan coming out in March.
Exactly.
We have started realizing what climate change is.
And even more reports from NEMA and other agencies are still telling us that we are going to still see more. We have started seeing the floodings. We have started seeing states being submerged. So it is not really about people profiting from that. It's about a national giant sleeping. So the giant has to wake up. And when the giant wakes up, other African countries will follow. So how much of these are you putting out there for people to see and to know what to do at particular time?
At the Eco Restoration Foundation, we have harmonized all our activities into pillars. So we have the ocean literacy, we have the conservation, industrial and municipal waste management, we have policy advocacy. The 5th one, Save Our Coast projects. So we're the first non-for-profit organization that has dismembered an entire ship here in Lekki at our expense. That is the role a government agency is supposed to play. And then sent it to recycling. and made a loss out of it. Meaning we spent more saving the coast than we made from selling the scrap. So we are doing more. We've set up an Eco Park Mangrove Sanctuary I mentioned earlier on, which is to promote ecotourism and conservation side by side, as well as research. We're on the local organizing committee promoting the Mangrove Marathon, which is a 10-kilometer eco-awareness run. The first episode held in Warri, the second episode held in Ibejileki. It holds every July in commemoration of the International Day for the Conservation of Mangroves. And that's where we always harp on the Great Wall of Nigeria being built using mangroves, right? Which is a natural resource to help us with climate resilience.
Wait, we're even going to build a Great Wall. How many mangroves are we looking at?
We are going to plant millions of mangroves along the coastline area because mangroves are the only trees. We hear about tree planting. NGOs are all planting trees in primary schools. That's not the solution alone. We all forget about the coastline because when the coast comes to you, all the trees you are planting are gone. So only coconut trees thrive by seashores, and only mangroves thrive in estuaries, brackish waters, and the shoreline itself, because they, are the only plants on earth that can actually survive on the salty water areas. So we are doing quite enough, but there is still more to be done. We need more volunteers. We need more people to join our programs. We're happy with organizations like yours who, focus on a wide area and through which other organizations come under and propagate their message. So more needs to be done. But more importantly is policy. We need to empower people who have love for the environment, love for the coastal areas, to have positions in agencies. I've been around a couple of places. I have some videos that have gone viral where I arrested people for throwing filth out of their car. That's good. Where I've got into a fist fight, actually, even with an Uber driver, for throwing filth out of the car. And then I tell myself, if I have the policy strength, because that guy is fighting back at me because I'm a normal citizen. Policymakers must be people who have track record, who have the love and passion, and not just politicking. But I like the current administration's pairing of a technocrat and a politician. So that way we may make some more progress.
So far, we've been able to, talk about the coastal erosion, climate resilience. What will you be wanting individuals like, me and others listening to do? Okay,
so charity begins at home.
Definitely.
What we want people to do, and our focus is not just on people. Individuals like you and I, businesses, small and large corporations, communities, and then policy-making organizations like government agencies, ministries, and departments. We all need to make a sacrifice of comfort. What appears comfortable to us may not be comfortable to the environment. You go into a grocery store, one nylon is given to you for toothpaste, another nylon is given to you for soap, another nylon is given. So you are walking out of the grocery store and you have
so many bags.
So many bags. You take them out and then they are off to the trash. We don't realize how it appears comfortable. And when I try to educate the store person, they tell me that people literally fight them and claim it's their right. That, they think is their right. So education, simple steps like having a reused bag, a reused market bag. Simple steps, that's for individuals now. Simple steps like carpooling, power control, turning your homes into smart homes, green buildings, which are, may appear expensive in the first instance, but cost saving on the long run. So, when you help nature, nature helps you back. Tree planting around your house, for example, we give you shade. For businesses, sustainability for businesses is important. It's not just for profit making. It's not just to sound good, right? It's not just for the gram, but actually to realize the impact your business has. Every business has a carbon footprint. A bank may have 3,000 pool vehicles. Why? Cut that down. Put managers together. Put staff in shuttle buses. Stop using paper without reusing the paper. In my office, it's a crime to print on paper one way. You must print on the other side. Use your corporate energy to get your staff to be part of an advocacy, beach cleanups, tree planting, work for nature, adopt a park. For government, enforce policies, put right people in the right positions, provide resources, and then lead by example. We have government corporations being the highest polluters. In the oil industry, for example, the NNPC is one of the most reckless polluters by example. I say that not because NNPC pollutes directly, but because NNPC is the majority shareholder in the production sharing contracts or the JV contracts with the IOC. So Shell and Chevron and the likes, they have 49%. Okay. So that means whatever they are doing recklessly, the NNPC is the baba of them. We have NOSDRA, the National Oil Spill Detection and Response Agency. The Bonga oil spill happened, which is still a national disgrace. I experienced it firsthand. I was right on the shores of the remote river when the Bonga spill explosion happened. We got on a ship with NOSDRA to approach Bonga to be able to get a scoop of the oil so that crude oil fingerprinting can trace it to the particular facility. And then the commander of the Navy on the oil facility and the commander of the Nigerian Navy ship we're on started firing at each other because that one had orders to force this one to turn back, not to go further. Guess what? That singular action has made Nigeria not able to enforce the court ruling against Shell of $20 billion because Shell still says they did not spill the oil. And that was because the government agency couldn't get to the required point to take the sample.
Exactly.
I was government and community affairs manager in Sterling Oil then. Shell said it was Sterling Oil that spilled the oil. And then next, it was the next oil company. So it became a mystery spill. And in our laws, mystery spills attract no compensation.
Wow, it's quite insightful. All right, then, so we'll leave it here today. Thank you so much for coming around, Prince David Omaghomi.
Thank you so much for having me, and I wish your team all the best. I look forward to you guys going terrestrial so you can have a wider audience, have a wider reach. And then please feel free to invite us again and let us know how we can support your program.